They thought humiliating a depressed black girl in the cafeteria would be an easy flex, until the quiet nobody they mocked moved like a ghost, struck like lightning, and revealed a truth they were never ready for. She's a world-level black belt fighter. One shove turned into a shattered hierarchy, one insult turned into a public downfall, and by the time the bullies realized what they awakened, it was already too late. The cafeteria of Crestwell High was always loud at lunchtime, an echoing mix of laughter, slamming trays, sneaker squeaks, and the competitive chaos of teenagers trying to appear more important than they actually were. But the moment Zara Mitchell stepped inside, that noise seemed to fold into itself, thinning just enough for her to feel the shift in the air. It wasn't silence, but it was the kind of subtle hush that told her she didn't belong here. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Her footsteps were soft, almost hesitant as she crossed the crowded room. Students stared without even pretending to hide it. Some leaned toward their friends, whispering behind raised hands. Others simply watched her openly, as if observing an unfamiliar species wandering into the wrong habitat. Zara kept walking, shoulders slightly hunched, her grip tightening around the plastic tray in her hands. She had been at Crestwell for 7 days, long enough to memorize the floor plan, not long enough to feel human here. She made her way to the very last table in the far corner, the one nobody claimed, the one everyone avoided like it carried a curse. It was perfect for her. Out of the way, out of the conversation, out of the world. She placed her tray down carefully, almost ritualistically, and took a slow breath. Her face was composed, expression thin as paper, but exhaustion clung to her like a second skin. Weeks of battling a depression she refused to speak about had carved faint shadows beneath her eyes, the kind that no makeup could hide. As she picked up her fork, a cluster of voices drifted across the cafeteria. "Look! The new black girl's here again. She always looks so dead inside. She probably doesn't even talk." The comments weren't loud, but they weren't meant to be. They were daggers whispered just quietly enough to give the speakers deniability, but sharp enough to make sure they hit their target. Zara heard every syllable. Her jaw tightened for half a second, but she didn't look up. She'd learned a long time ago that reacting only made things worse. She pushed a piece of chicken across her plate, trying to convince herself to eat something, anything. But her appetite had abandoned her weeks ago. She inhaled slowly and exhaled shakily. "Just get through lunch," she told herself. "Just get through the day. Just get through." A shadow moved across her table. Zara froze. She didn't need to look up to know what that shadow meant. The sudden shift in the room's energy, part excitement, part dread, rolled toward her like a wave. And then she heard them. Heavy boots, loud laughter, the unmistakable swagger of people who believed the school belonged to them. The varsity jackets appeared first, bright orange sleeves, black letters stitched across broad shoulders. They moved as a pack, confident, loud, territorial. Carter Hayes led the group, tall, smirking, the kind of boy teachers adored and students feared for reasons nobody ever said out loud. His entourage, Dean, Milo, and Travis, followed behind him like shadows that hadn't chosen their owner. They were scanning the cafeteria, looking for amusement, and then Carter's eyes landed on Zara. Her heart dropped. A girl sitting 2 tables away leaned in just enough to whisper, "They're coming this way. You might want to move." But it was already too late. Carter's grin widened, slow, deliberate, hungry. That grin meant one thing. He'd found entertainment for the afternoon. The cafeteria, once loud, now buzzed with anticipation, like everyone could feel a storm gathering. Zara tightened her grip on her fork. The moment Carter Hayes took his first step toward her, the entire cafeteria changed temperature, and everything in Zara's life was about to shift with it. And then, as Carter's shadow spread across the room, the cafeteria truly began to change color. He wasn't walking, he was hunting, and Zara was in his direct path. Carter Hayes didn't walk toward Zara. He stalked, Every step he took seemed to command the cafeteria, pulling the attention of every wandering eye and every whispering mouth straight to the far corner where she sat. By the time he reached her table, half the room had already turned in their seats, phones tilted subtly upward, anticipating a show. Carter stopped directly in front of her, arms crossed over his chest, varsity jacket gleaming obnoxiously under the cafeteria lights. Behind him stood Dean, Milo, and Travis, three loyal shadows who existed solely to echo his arrogance. Together they formed a wall of swagger and cruelty. Zara didn't look up. She kept her gaze on her tray, her fork suspended mid-air, fingers tightening until her knuckles paled. Her breath trembled, but her posture stayed controlled. She couldn't afford to let them see her fear. Not today. Carter clicked his tongue mockingly. "Well, well, look what we have here." He leaned forward, eyes narrowing with performative pity. "This cafeteria isn't really for people like you." The sentence stabbed at the air. A few students gasped. Many smirked. Some lifted their phones higher. Zara swallowed. No reaction, not even a twitch. She had mastered the art of staying silent, of shrinking herself to minimize the damage. Until today, at least. Dean circled the side of the table, peering down at her like she was an exhibit. "What's wrong?" he taunted. "Lose your voice, or you just don't speak human?" A ripple of cruel laughter erupted around them. Carter decided the silence wasn't enough entertainment. He reached forward and tapped her tray with 2 fingers, gently at first. Testing. Then, with a smirk, he pushed it harder, the metal clattering loudly. The noise echoed like a slap through the cafeteria. Zara finally blinked, her breathing tightening in her chest. She kept her fingers locked around the fork beneath the table, squeezing until the plastic bent. The cafeteria buzzed with excitement. Students nudged each other, murmuring like gamblers waiting for a fight to break out. Carter tilted his head. "Come on," he said softly, mockingly. "Give us something. A tear? A squeak? Anything." Still nothing. He wanted a reaction, and Zara refused to hand it to him. So he escalated. Carter reached across the table, intending to yank a napkin from the small stack next to her tray, just something else to invade her space, to show he could take anything from her without consequence. But as his fingers brushed the napkins, his hand bumped against something else. A small photograph slipped out of Zara's partially open wallet and fluttered to the floor. Zara's heart stopped. She flinched violently, the first real movement she'd made since he arrived. Her eyes darted to the photo. A picture of her and her mother, taken years before the world became heavy. Carter noticed her reaction instantly. "Oh?" he drawled, bending down. "What's this?" had arrived. He picked up the photograph with exaggerated care, lifting it between 2 fingers like a dirty receipt. The room leaned in. Zara's chest tightened, and something fierce flickered behind her otherwise muted expression. Anger, raw and sharp, breaking through the fog she'd been living in. Carter chuckled as he examined the picture. "Aw, is this Mommy?" He tilted it toward Dean and Milo, who snickered. "She looks just like you, depressed and tragic." Zara's pulse hammered in her ears. The cafeteria felt smaller, hotter, meaner. A switch flipped somewhere deep inside her. She stood, not abruptly, but slowly, deliberately, with a steadiness that made Carter pause for half a second, despite himself. Her fork clattered softly onto the tray. The air in the room tightened. Carter held the photo up higher, smirking. "So, tell me, who is she? Another loser like you?" And just like that, something inside Zara snapped awake. The cafeteria had no idea what it was about to witness, but it would remember this moment forever. Carter lifted the photograph high above his head like it was some kind of trophy, and the cafeteria responded exactly the way he wanted, by erupting into laughter. The cruel kind, the contagious kind, the kind that sinks into the skin of the person being targeted. Milo leaned in closer, squinting at the image before bursting out, "Wow, she looks just like you. Bet she's disappointed she gave birth to something that useless." The words cut deeper than any slap could have. Zara's body jolted, the air ripping sharply into her lungs as she stood up so fast her chair screeched across the floor. Her hand trembled, not from fear, but from anger, boiling at a dangerous temperature. Her gaze locked onto the photo in Carter's hand, the only precious thing she kept with her. Her mother's face, smiling, gentle, was now being mocked by a pack of wolves. The crowd around them drew even tighter, phones raised, recording every second. A few students whispered uneasily. Most simply waited for the next piece of cruelty. Travis, eager to contribute, stepped beside Zara and swept his arm across the table in one aggressive motion. Her tray flipped into the air before crashing onto the floor. Food splattering across the tiles, the metal tray ringing sharp like a cymbal. Laughter exploded. Zara froze, staring at the mess. Her breath shortened. Her shoulders rose and fell in shallow bursts, the humiliation pressing down like a physical weight. Dean smirked, folding his arms. "Look at her. The depressed freak's about to cry." Zara swallowed hard, but she didn't cry. She inhaled once, jagged, painful, and then crouched down to pick up what she could, hands shaking. Her hair fell forward, creating a curtain she wished she could hide behind for real. But fate, or cruelty, wouldn't allow even that. As she reached for the tray, Carter stepped forward and shoved her shoulder. Hard, Zara's body pitched sideways. The crowd gasped as she hit the floor, knees and palms slamming the ground. But instead of collapsing the way a scared girl would, Zara's body lowered into a position startlingly controlled. One knee bent, one leg braced outward, hand flat on the floor, fingers spread for balance. A stance that wasn't accidental. A stance that didn't belong to a weak girl. A stance someone trained would fall into by instinct. A few students in the crowd noticed first. "Wait, that looks like a karate stance." "No way." "The quiet girl?" Their murmurs rippled outward like shockwaves. Zara didn't notice them. Not yet. Her mind was still locked on the floor, heart pounding in her ears, her mother's face flashing in her vision, the humiliation stacking layer upon layer until something inside her began to crack, then burn. Carter, oblivious to the shift, crouched down with a sneer. The lights from the phones overhead glinted off his grin, sharp, arrogant, poisonous. He leaned so close she could feel his breath against her ear. "Get up," he hissed, enjoying every syllable. "Get up, you worthless trash." Zara's fingers tightened against the floor. Something inside her, a dam, a restraint, a chain she'd been carrying for months, snapped clean in two. Her breathing steadied, her spine straightened, her eyes, once clouded with exhaustion and fear, sharpened to a razor edge. She rose, not as a victim, but as something Carter had no preparation for. Carter didn't realize the mistake he'd just made. He couldn't see the storm forming in the quiet girl's posture, but everyone else could. And with that one sentence, worthless trash, Zara found the final spark she needed. She had no reason left to hold back. No reason left to endure. The cafeteria was about to witness the moment everything changed. A ring had formed around Zara without her noticing. Tight, breathless, hungry. Students pressed closer, phones raised like torches, eyes flicking between her and Carter, as if watching the prelude to a storm they didn't yet understand. The cafeteria was no longer a place to eat. It had become an arena. Zara rose slowly from the ground. There was no rush, no panic in her movement, only deliberate precision, as though each vertebra clicked into place with intention. Her face remained unreadable, but her eyes had changed. The exhaustion that once clouded them had burned away, revealing a depth darker than the cafeteria lighting could swallow. Something heavy, something ancient. Something dangerous. She brushed the dust from her skirt with a single sweep of her hand. Then she looked up, her gaze locked onto Carter with a stillness so intense he felt it before he understood it. A chill crept up his spine, instinctive, primal, but he forced a laugh to cover it. "Well, look at that," he snorted, tossing the photograph onto the table behind him. The puppet decided to get back on her strings, but Zara didn't blink. She didn't scowl. She didn't speak. She stepped forward, just one step, soft, controlled, quiet enough to be almost gentle, yet powerful enough to make Carter stumble half a step back. He didn't know why he moved. His brain hadn't caught up. His body reacted on its own, as if confronted with something it recognized as a threat long before he consciously did. A hush fell across the cafeteria so abruptly it was suffocating. The air tightened around them like a held breath. A girl in the crowd whispered, almost reverently, "She's different now." Zara's fingers drifted to the edge of the table. Her posture straightened, shoulders settling into a relaxed, yet unmistakably guarded frame, like someone who understood violence intimately. Her breath steadied, becoming calm, almost meditative. Then she lifted her fork, but she didn't hold it like an eating utensil. She flicked it into motion, spinning it between her fingers with fluid, effortless control. The metal glinted as it rotated, flipping over her knuckles in a movement far too quick and too practiced to be accidental. Milo's jaw dropped. "Dude, what the hell was that?" he stammered. "Normal people don't do that. That's like professional level stuff." Dean swallowed hard. Even he could feel the shift now. Carter blinked, confused. His smirk faltered for the first time. Whatever he thought Zara was before, a weak transfer student, a depressed nobody, no longer matched the person standing in front of him, because this wasn't the same girl he dumped a tray on. This wasn't the same girl he mocked 2 minutes ago. This was someone with discipline in her bones, skill in her breath, violence curled under her skin like a coiled wire. The crowd felt it too, an electric tension rippling outward until even the far tables sat frozen, eyes glued to the unfolding scene. Zara stopped the fork mid-spin, catching it between her fingers with such accuracy that even the students recording gasped quietly. She didn't point it at Carter. She didn't threaten him. She simply held it, like a reminder, like a warning. The bullies had no idea that the girl they humiliated, quiet, tired, invisible, had been trained to fight on the world stage, a fighter they were seconds away from provoking beyond return. The atmosphere tightened until it felt like the lights themselves were trembling. No one knew what would happen next, not until Carter, too arrogant or too stupid to sense danger, reached out and placed his hand on Zara's shoulder one more time. And that was the final mistake he would ever make casually. The cafeteria's noise began to swell again. Not fully, not freely, but in a jittery, nervous hum. Students weren't talking so much as buzzing, every eye locked on the circle around Zara and Carter. Anticipation slithered through the room like smoke. Something was about to happen. Everyone felt it. Carter stepped closer, closer than any sane person would. His hand rose slowly, fingers curling. His lips twisted into a smirk, drenched in arrogance and denial. Denial of the atmosphere, denial of the danger, denial of the very real shift everyone else could sense from Zara's posture alone. Then his palm touched her shoulder, a casual push, meant to re-establish dominance, meant to say, "I control this narrative." But he never finished the motion, because the moment his fingertips pressed into her skin, Zara moved, not angrily, not wildly, but with a speed and precision that sliced through the space like lightning. Her body twisted in a tight pivot, her hand snapping upward to trap Carter's wrist before he even registered she'd moved. In one controlled motion, she wrenched his arm downward and back, twisting it into a joint lock so clean it could have been pulled straight from a martial arts demonstration. The crack of Carter's knees hitting the floor echoed through the cafeteria. His scream followed half a second later. Students shouted. Phones shot upward. Chairs scraped as kids stood to see better. Dean and Milo reacted on instinct, charging forward like panicked animals. But Zara didn't hesitate. She shifted her weight, released Carter's wrist just long enough to spin sideways, her leg sweeping out in a horizontal arc. Her foot struck Milo square in the chest. Airborne before he even realized he'd been hit, he crashed onto a nearby table, food scattering everywhere. Dean reached her from the opposite side, but Zara pivoted again. One sharp kick, perfectly timed, slammed into his abdomen. He folded in half before skidding across the floor like a rag doll. The cafeteria exploded. Screams, gasps, cheers. Phones trembling in excited hands. Zara didn't revel. She didn't smile. She didn't even look at the boys she had taken down. She stood still, calm, controlled, breathing steady. Her stance low and grounded, feet angled in a way that no ordinary person would naturally fall into. A stance born from training, from muscle memory, from years of discipline. A teacher sprinted into the circle, panic on his face. "Enough! Stop right!" He froze mid-sentence. His eyes widened, not at Carter writhing on the ground, or Milo coughing on a table, or Dean groaning near the chairs, but at Zara, at the way she stood, at the unmistakable stance, at the posture only elite fighters used. Recognition dawned on him like a slap. "Oh, my God," he whispered. He had seen that stance before. On TV, in videos, in competition rings around the world. Zara Mitchell, the prodigy, the teenage phenom who dominated international youth karate tournaments, a world black belt champion with a record so astonishing people assumed it was exaggerated. And then she vanished, 2 years ago, without explanation. A student near the front, breathless with shock, shouted, "Holy crap! That's her! That's Zara Mitchell! The Zara Mitchell!" The name spread like wildfire. Gasps, murmurs, disbelief. Carter, still on the floor clutching his wrist, looked up through pain-blurred eyes. Confusion and dread warred across his face. He had not picked a fight with a quiet new girl. He had picked a fight with a legend, and he was losing. If the cafeteria was electrified before, now it was roaring. The quiet girl they mocked had just dismantled half the bully crew with terrifying ease. And everyone understood the truth. She wasn't done yet. Because Carter, fueled by embarrassment and hatred, forced himself up despite the pain, determined to strike back. And that next decision would make everything far, far worse. Tables had been overturned in the chaos. Trays scattered across the floor like fallen shields. Students climbed onto chairs, benches, even tabletops to record the unfolding spectacle. The cafeteria felt less like a school lunchroom now and more like an underground arena full of adrenaline and disbelief. Carter Hayes struggled to stand. His face burned red, not just from pain, but from humiliation. From the realization that the entire school had just watched him get dismantled by the girl he'd assumed was weak, voiceless, disposable. His pride, massive, fragile, poisonous, began to crack. "Enough of this," he spat, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. Then his eyes found it. A baseball bat lying on a table just a few feet away, brought earlier to show off his status as captain of the team. A prop for intimidation. A symbol of dominance. A weapon. Carter grabbed it with shaking hands. "All right," he growled, voice trembling with fury. "You want to play? Let's play." The crowd inhaled sharply. Students near the front backed away, forming a wider circle. The atmosphere throbbed with tension, fear, excitement, disbelief, forming a suffocating blend. Zara didn't move. She stood perfectly still, body relaxed, eyes quietly trained on him. No fear, no hesitation, only a calmness so controlled that it rattled the people watching. Carter raised the bat, muscles tensing. Then he swung. The air sliced with the force of the blow, but Zara slipped sideways, her head barely tilting. The swing missed her by a blur. Gasps exploded through the room. Carter stumbled, thrown off by his own momentum. Before he could recover, Zara's hand shot out. She caught the bat, not at the handle, not at the end, right in the middle. Her fingers wrapped around the wood, stopping the weapon mid-swing with a grip so solid and so impossibly fast that several students actually screamed.
What the hell?
Someone whispered hoarsely. Carter's eyes widened in disbelief. He pulled back, but the bat didn't move. Zara's arm didn't even tremble. For the first time he understood, he was outmatched. Zara tightened her grip and yanked. Carter lurched forward, losing his balance entirely. His body pitched toward her. She stepped aside with surgical precision. His momentum carried him straight into the nearest table. Thud! The wooden edge slammed into his back. Carter cried out in pain as he sprawled across the surface, gasping for air. Zara advanced with purpose, not aggression, but authority. She lowered the bat and pressed its end gently but firmly against the center of Carter's chest. She wasn't hitting him. She wasn't even threatening him. She was controlling him, dominating him, holding him down without force, without bruises, yet with complete mastery. Dean, watching from across the circle, shouted, voice cracking, "Holy crap! She took him out! She actually took down Carter!" Shock rippled outward. Phones zoomed in. Students covered their mouths. Somewhere in the crowd, someone whispered, "She's unstoppable." On the table, Carter stared up at Zara, and for the first time in his life, for the first time since he'd built his reign of fear at Crestwell High, his expression broke into something raw and unfamiliar. Fear, pure, undiluted fear, because he finally realized he wasn't fighting a victim. He wasn't fighting a shy transfer student. He wasn't fighting a nobody. He was fighting someone who had been forged for combat, someone he should never have touched. That fear in Carter's eyes, shaking, sinking, was the moment everyone knew the hierarchy of Crestwell High had just shifted forever. But the fight wasn't over, not even close, because while Carter lay trembling on the table, the live stream of the entire cafeteria brawl had already spread across the school, reaching someone Zara had hoped never to face again. Chaos had changed flavors in the cafeteria. It wasn't the chaotic panic of a fight anymore. It was the chaotic excitement of a spectacle going viral. Dozens of students had their phones out, not just recording, but live streaming across every platform they could open. Notifications chimed like frantic birdsong. Messages popped up in real time. "OMG, Carter just got demolished. Check the stream. Who is this girl? No way that's real. Send link." In a matter of minutes, the video had already reached classrooms, hallways, even the faculty lounge. Students from other lunch periods abandoned their meals and sprinted toward the cafeteria like it was a championship game. Meanwhile, Zara still stood with the bat planted against Carter's chest, steady, composed, her breathing perfectly controlled. She wasn't taunting him. She wasn't attacking. She was simply there, a force, a warning, a truth Carter didn't want to face. Around them, chairs lay overturned, food splattered across the floor, metal trays scattered like discarded armor. The scene looked like the aftermath of a riot. Then, "Everyone stop recording!" a voice boomed from the entrance. Mr. Lewis, the school's notoriously strict hall monitor, burst into the cafeteria, red-faced and sweating. He waved his arms wildly, pushing through the circle of students. "Put the phones away, right now! This is not entertainment!" But even as he shouted, more students climbed onto tables to get a better angle. Someone in the crowd yelled, "Move! I can't see! She's actually got Carter pinned." Lewis's jaw tightened. He clearly didn't have the authority, or the physicality, to break apart this frenzy. Meanwhile, Carter managed to push up onto one elbow, face contorted with pain and pure humiliation. His reputation, built on fear, swagger, and untouchability, was crumbling in front of the entire school. "You?" he hissed, pointing a shaking finger at Zara. "You're dead. You hear me? You're dead. Do you even know who I am?" Zara didn't move the bat, didn't blink, didn't even look at him fully. Her eyes remained sharp, cold, but not cruel, steady, but not gloating. It wasn't hatred. It wasn't vengeance. It was a warning carved from instinct, a look that said, "Walk away before this gets worse." That look alone was enough to silence half the crowd. But not Carter. He struggled to rise further, face purple with anger and embarrassment. "You're finished. My coach, my team, my dad, they're all gonna—" He didn't get to finish the sentence because suddenly, from the back of the cafeteria, someone shouted, "Coach Warren is coming!" A wave of gasps rippled outward. Students twisted around, phones swinging toward the entrance. Coach Warren wasn't just any staff member. He was the kingmaker of Crestwell High, the head of the athletics department, the beloved baseball coach, and the man who had personally built Carter's reputation as the school's golden boy. His loyalty to Carter was infamous. His temper was legendary. Even Carter, still pinned under the bat, smirked through the pain. "See?" he rasped. "You're done, karate girl. Your little performance is over." The crowd split down the middle like parted water as a massive silhouette stepped into view. Warren's broad shoulders blocked half the doorway, his heavy boots thudding across the tile floor with the ominous weight of a man used to command. Students whispered frantically, "Carter's saved. She's gonna get expelled." "Oh my God, she's dead. He always takes Carter's side." Carter let out a breathy, triumphant laugh, ugly and strained. "I told you," he sneered. "You messed with the wrong guy." But Zara did not flinch. Her grip on the bat tightened, not fearfully, but with calm readiness. Her stance shifted almost imperceptibly, grounding her weight, preparing for anything. Her eyes flicked toward the entrance only for a moment, just long enough to assess the threat. Because Zara knew something Carter didn't. The man entering the cafeteria wasn't coming to protect him, and the truth about to be revealed would shake Crestwell High more violently than any punch or kick could. The cafeteria parted down the middle as Coach Warren entered, his heavy boots punching against the floor in slow, thunderous beats. The crowd instinctively stepped aside, creating a clear path straight through the chaos. Overturned chairs, fallen trays, spilled food, and, at the center of it all, Carter Hayes pinned beneath the baseball bat that had betrayed him. Warren's face was flushed an angry red. A vein near his temple throbbed. For a moment he didn't speak. He simply absorbed the disaster with a look that made even the boldest students shrink back. His eyes snapped to Carter, then to Zara, then back again. The confusion twisting across his features wasn't subtle. It flickered from shock to disbelief, then to something far more complicated, something like recognition. "What?" he began, then stopped. His breath hitched. His eyes widened as if a ghost had materialized in front of him. Zara Mitchell? Silence crushed the cafeteria instantly. You could have heard a pin drop or a heart pound. Zara didn't move. She didn't answer. She simply held the bat in place, calm as a drawn blade. Carter, however, lit up with desperate hope. "Coach!" he sputtered, scrambling to sit up. "Coach! She attacked me! She just—" Warren didn't even look at him. "Shut up!" The words cracked like a whip. The bully crew collectively recoiled. Carter froze, mouth hanging open in disbelief. Warren stepped closer to Zara, his eyes scanning her posture, the steady grip on the bat, the grounded stance, the laser-like focus in her expression. Every detail seemed to confirm something he already feared he knew. "You," he murmured. "You're really her." Milo frowned. "Her? Who the hell is she?" Warren's voice dropped into something like awe, tinged with sorrow, memory, and a hint of guilt. 2 years ago, Warren said slowly, I was a referee at the World Youth Karate Championship. Whispers rippled across the room. Students exchanged glances, some confused, some stunned, many realizing just how far out of Carter's league this fight had been. Warren continued, voice steadying. I watched a girl, 16 years old, take the finals with a discipline and power I'd never seen in an athlete her age. A legend in the making. His gaze locked onto Zara. You disappeared after that. Every coach, every official wondered why. Zara's jaw tightened. Her eyes dipped, just barely, before rising again with the same controlled fury. Warren exhaled, almost shaken. Zara Mitchell, World Youth Black Belt Champion. Carter blanched. What? He croaked. That can't. No, that's not. She's not just anything. Warren snapped. You idiots picked the worst possible person to provoke. The weight of his words hit the bully crew like a blow. Around them, the cafeteria erupted into frantic murmurs. Holy crap! She's that Zara? The champion? The one who vanished? No wonder she destroyed him. Warren turned back to Carter, voice harsh, but edged with something protective. Toward Zara, not him. You do not want to mess with this girl, Carter. He jabbed a finger at Zara. She could have broken your arm in 3 different places already. Easily. Carter stared at Zara, truly seeing her for the first time, and what he saw terrified him. His breath hitched. His bravado crumbled. He looked smaller, fragile even, as the truth pressed down on him. For the first time since the confrontation began, Carter understood. Zara hadn't just beaten him. She had restrained herself, and that realization hollowed him out from the inside. But Warren wasn't finished. His radio crackled. A voice cut through the tension. All staff, report. We have a serious incident in the cafeteria. Principal Dawson is requesting all involved in his office immediately. Warren's eyes hardened. Zara lowered the bat. Carter flinched. The truth had finally surfaced, but it was already too late, because the principal had been alerted, and what awaited them in his office would make the cafeteria fight look small. The hallway outside the cafeteria felt colder, narrower, and heavier with each step the students took. The chaotic roar behind them faded, replaced by the tense echo of footsteps marching toward judgment. Word had already spread. Dozens of students peeked from classrooms, whispering urgently as Zara, Carter, Milo, Dean, and Travis were herded down the hall like a lineup of suspects. And then Principal Dawson appeared, tall, rigid, and perpetually irritated. Dawson was infamous for his strictness, and even more infamous for protecting Crestwell High's star athletes at all costs. His polished shoes clicked loudly on the tile as he approached, his face contorted into a scowl deep enough to carve stone. His eyes landed on Zara first. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't ask who started it. He didn't even glance at the boys behind her. He simply glared, jaw clenched. My office, now. All of you. His voice was cold and absolute, no room for argument. Zara didn't react. She simply stepped forward, shoulders squared, expression unreadable. She had no expectations of fairness, no illusions about who the administration usually believed. Behind her, Carter limped slightly as he walked, clutching his wrist. Dean and Milo shadowed him, whispering urgently. Just stick to the story, Dean muttered, voice low but eager. Say she attacked us first. Yeah, Milo added. No one got footage of us messing with her. The video starts when she flipped Carter. Carter nodded rapidly, desperation sharpening his voice. Right. They won't know we touched her stuff or anything else. We just say we were defending ourselves. Confidence began to creep back into him. Thin, shaky, but present. He walked taller. His sneer returned, but then Zara glanced back over her shoulder. Just a glance, a quiet, icy, razor-edged look that sliced through their whispers like a blade. Dean froze mid-breath. His words died in his throat. It wasn't a threatening look. It was a look of someone who saw everything, someone who wasn't intimidated anymore, someone dangerous. Carter swallowed hard, suddenly less certain. Principal Dawson pushed open the office door without ceremony. Inside, he barked. Students lined the hallway behind them, craning their necks, waiting for the verdict. Zara stepped in first. Carter scowled but followed. Dean, Milo, and Travis trailed behind, all trying to stay as far from Carter's humiliation as possible. Just as Dawson was about to close the door, a voice called out. "Wait!" The hall fell silent. A girl stepped forward from the crowd, small, nervous, but determined. She held her phone in her hand, fingers gripping it tightly as though she wasn't sure she had the right to speak. "Principal Dawson," she began, voice trembling. I, I recorded everything." Every whisper stopped. Every breath halted. Carter spun around, face draining of color. "What?" he whispered. The girl lifted her phone higher. "Everything." From the moment they walked up to her, gasps rippled through the hall. A teacher pressed a hand over their mouth. Even Dawson paused, thrown off for the first time. Dean let out a strangled sound. Milo muttered, "You've got to be kidding me." Carter looked as if the ground had opened beneath his feet. The girl met Dawson's eyes, summoning every ounce of courage she had. "I can airdrop it to you right now," she said. "It shows who started it." The principal's jaw tightened. He turned slowly toward Carter, who was now trembling, not from pain this time, but from panic. "Everything?" Dawson repeated, voice dangerously calm. The girl nodded. "Everything." And in that moment, Carter's entire strategy, his lies, his arrogance, his assumed immunity, collapsed. The safety net he'd relied on his whole life snapped beneath him. For the first time, the principal's gaze shifted away from Zara and toward the boys behind her. And, with that single phone raised in the air, the balance of power in Crestwell High began to tilt, slowly, finally, toward the girl who had never expected justice to be on her side. Principal Dawson's office felt even smaller than usual. The blinds were half closed, the fluorescent lights hummed faintly, and every chair in the room was filled. Zara, Carter, Dean, Milo, Travis, Coach Warren, and the trembling girl who held the phone containing the truth. Dawson sat behind his desk, jaw tight, fingers steepled. "Play the video," he ordered. The girl swallowed and tapped her screen. The room went silent as the footage unfurled across Dawson's computer monitor. There was Carter snatching the photograph from Zara's wallet. There was Milo mocking her mother. There was Travis flipping her food tray to the floor. There was Zara falling after being shoved, her gasps audible even over the cafeteria noise. There was the circle of laughter closing in around her. And finally, there was Carter grabbing the baseball bat and swinging first. Not 1 second of it could be misinterpreted. The office remained dead still when the video ended. Only Carter's ragged breathing broke the quiet. Dawson leaned back, massaging his temples. His expression shifted, not quickly but unmistakably, from irritation to confusion to something dangerously close to fear. He had entered the situation fully prepared to defend Carter. He could no longer do that. "Principal," Carter began, voice cracking, She overreacted. You saw what she did. She could have killed me." Zara sat straight-backed, hands folded in her lap. Her voice didn't rise. Her breathing didn't shake. "I defended myself," she said calmly. "I didn't attack anyone. I responded to repeated aggression." Warren nodded firmly. "She showed more restraint than most adults would. If she hadn't had training, she might have been seriously injured by your students." Then he looked directly at Dawson. "And to be clear, if she had chosen to fight back at full force, none of those boys would be standing here right now." Dean's face drained of color. Milo swallowed loudly. Travis stared at the floor. Carter shook his head violently. No, this is wrong. They provoked her, okay, but she's dangerous. You saw how she threw Milo and Dean. This is insane." "Dangerous?" Warren echoed. "She stopped the fight. You escalated it." The words hit Carter like a strike to the ribs. Principal Dawson, who had always protected Crestwell's athletes, who relied on their wealthy parents, who had likely already crafted a narrative in Carter's favor, was visibly unraveling. His throat bobbed as he swallowed. His voice trembled. I need to reconsider the situation. The footage is clear. The behavior I saw in that cafeteria by several of you was completely unacceptable." Carter blinked rapidly. "What are you saying?" Dawson didn't answer him. Instead, he muttered, mostly to himself, We may need to revise disciplinary action. All of it. For the first time, Carter understood. The shield he'd always relied on, the favoritism, the status, the money, the power, was cracking. His father couldn't protect him here. His reputation wouldn't save him. And the principal who once defended him was slipping through his grasp like sand. This wasn't just losing a fight. It was the beginning of his downfall. And just as the room settled into a tense, uneasy silence, Dawson's office phone rang. He glanced at the caller ID. His face went pale. "The city education department," he murmured. Everything was about to get much, much worse. Principal Dawson's office felt like a pressure cooker, silent, tense, and on the verge of blowing apart. The air was thick enough to choke on. Carter sat stiffly in his chair, eyes darting between Dawson and Zara, while Dean and Milo hunched small as if trying to disappear into the upholstery. Zara remained centered, her posture calm, though her expression carried a guarded stillness that suggested she was ready for anything. Then the phone rang. A sharp, piercing sound that cut through the room like a knife. Dawson flinched before reaching slowly for the receiver. "Principal Dawson speaking." The moment the voice on the other end began talking, something shifted in Dawson's face. A flicker of surprise, then alarm, then outright dread. Yes, I understand," he said quickly. "Yes, we'll fully cooperate. Yes, immediately." The office froze. He hung up the phone with a trembling hand and sank back into his chair as though the weight of the building had dropped onto his shoulders. Coach Warren narrowed his eyes. "What's going on?" Dawson rubbed his forehead, exhaling long and hard. "That," he muttered, "was the city education department." Carter straightened, confused. "Why? Why would they call?" Dawson looked directly at him, and the expression alone made Carter's stomach drop. "They've received a formal complaint," Dawson said. "A serious one." Carter blinked rapidly. "Complaint about what?" Dawson hesitated. Something he never did. "About Crestwell High, allegedly covering up repeated cases of bullying and violent misconduct." The room went silent. Carter felt the blood drain from his face. "What? No, that's ridiculous. Who told them?" Dean shot him a horrified look. Milo buried his head in his hands. Coach Warren folded his arms. "And they didn't call just to warn you, did they?" Dawson swallowed. "No, they're sending someone to investigate, and they want a full written incident report immediately." Drama detonated instantly. Carter jumped to his feet. "This is insane. Why would anyone call the department over a school fight?" Dawson's voice hardened. "Because someone in this city saw the live stream. Someone with authority." Zara's eyes narrowed. Not in malice, but with a quiet understanding. Carter, however, was spiraling. Who would even care enough to— He froze mid-sentence, because Dawson wasn't finished. "It was a parent," Dawson said quietly. "A parent who happened to be watching the live stream as it spread. A parent who recognized his daughter in the middle of that chaos." A chill dropped into the room like a stone. Dawson continued, voice thick with resignation. "He's a former military serviceman, highly decorated, and currently sits on the City Council Advisory Board." Carter's mouth fell open. Dean whispered, "Oh, God." Milo muttered, "We're dead." Warren exhaled sharply. Even he looked stunned. Carter stumbled backward until he hit the filing cabinet behind him. No, it can't be. Not him. Not— He squeezed his eyes shut, face contorting. "Not her dad." His voice cracked. For the first time in his life, Carter Hayes looked like a boy. Not a bully, not an athlete, not a king of the school. Just a terrified teenager realizing the person he tormented had someone far more powerful standing behind her. "No," he whispered. "This can't be happening." And as if summoned by his dread, the office door swung open. Standing in the doorway, tall, imposing, unmistakably authoritative, was Zara's father, and he had seen everything. The door to Principal Dawson's office swung open with a force that made everyone jump. The air shifted, charged, heavy, almost military in its precision, as Mr. Mitchell stepped inside. He wore his old service uniform, pressed, immaculate, the medals catching the fluorescent light with sharp glints. His posture was straight as a steel rod. His expression, stern, cold, controlled, was more intimidating than any yell could ever be. His eyes scanned the room, not frantically, not with panic, but with the quiet, terrifying focus of a man trained to assess threats in seconds. Zara stiffened. She hadn't wanted him to see this. There were pieces of her life she'd kept hidden from him, not out of shame, but out of fear that he'd blame himself for not protecting her sooner. But he wasn't looking at her, not yet. His gaze locked onto Carter Hayes like a targeting system. Carter, who had tormented countless students without consequence. Carter, who had always relied on the school's protection. Carter, who suddenly looked no bigger than a frightened child. Principal Dawson nearly tripped over his own desk as he scrambled to stand. "Mr. Mitchell," he stammered, we were just beginning to review." "I've seen the live stream," Mr. Mitchell cut in sharply. His voice was calm, but it vibrated with controlled fury. "I came here to understand why my daughter was humiliated in front of the entire school." Carter swallowed so hard it echoed. Dawson cleared his throat. We are investigating the incident." "No," Mr. Mitchell said without raising his voice. "You are reacting to being caught." Silence punched the air out of the room. Zara finally found her voice. "Dad, I'm okay. Really?" He turned to her then. And in that single moment, the hardness in his face softened. His hand came to rest gently on her shoulder, thumb brushing lightly. Protective, reassuring, heartbroken. "You didn't deserve this," he murmured. "Not today. Not ever." Her eyes flickered, emotion tightening her throat. But the softness vanished the moment he faced the boys again. Carter flinched under the intensity of that gaze. "Mr." Mitchell reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a thin folder. He set it on Dawson's desk with a decisive thud. "I've been receiving complaints from other parents about this group for months," he said. "Reports of intimidation, harassment, violence." Dawson stiffened. Warren raised his eyebrows. Dean and Milo exchanged horrified glances, but every time those complaints were submitted, Mr. Mitchell continued, they were dismissed, buried, ignored. His eyes locked onto the principal. "To protect the school's reputation and your precious team." Dawson's face turned the color of wet ash. Carter whispered, "Oh, my God!" Mr. Mitchell didn't look at him. He didn't need to. He leaned one hand on Dawson's desk, voice dropping into a tone that demanded obedience. "And today," he said, "all of it comes to light." The words hit the room like a gavel. No shouting, no threats, just truth, cold and undeniable. Carter felt his world splinter at the edges as the reality sank in. There would be no shield this time. Principal Dawson knew it too. Jaw clenched, palms sweating, he made the first decision Carter never expected him to make. Everything was about to change. The atmosphere inside Principal Dawson's office had transformed. It no longer felt like a school administrator's workspace. It felt like a courtroom, tense, charged, waiting for a verdict that would alter everything. Principal Dawson rose slowly from behind his desk. His hands trembled just slightly as he straightened his tie, trying to rebuild whatever authority he still possessed. But the room knew the truth. His control had already slipped. He cleared his throat. "After reviewing the video," he began, voice shaky, and hearing statements from everyone involved, he paused, glancing at Mr. Mitchell, then Coach Warren, then the terrified boys huddled on the sofa. "I am temporarily suspending Carter Hayes and his associates pending further investigation." It was as if someone had detonated a bomb. Carter exploded from his chair. "What? You can't suspend me. I'm the team captain. I have regionals next month." His voice cracked, revealing the panic clawing its way through his bravado. Dawson didn't flinch this time. "That," he said firmly, "is exactly the problem. You believe your position places you above the rules." Dean's mouth fell open. Milo slumped backward, eyes glassy. Travis pressed his palms to his face. Carter shook his head violently, turning desperately to Coach Warren. "Coach, do something! Tell him! You need me for the season." Warren exhaled slowly. "I need players who respect this school and their classmates," he said. "Right now, that's not you." Carter looked like he'd been struck. Silence followed. Deep, crushing, disorienting. Then Coach Warren turned toward Zara. His expression softened, not with pity, but with respect. "Zara," he said gently, "I know this day has been overwhelming." She blinked, surprised he used her name with such care. "But I want to offer you something. An opportunity." Carter glared at him in disbelief. Warren continued, voice steady. "I want to invite you to join the school's martial arts team. I know you stepped away from the sport. I know you've been through things people can't imagine." He paused. "But I've watched you before, on the world stage. You have a gift, and if you ever decide to return, I believe Crestwell could be the place where you rediscover who you are." The room erupted in whispers. Students outside the open door craned their necks. Even Dawson looked stunned. "Zara Mitchell? Come back? Is she joining the team? No way! She's a literal champion." Zara's breath caught in her chest. Out of everything that had happened today, every insult, every blow, every revelation, this was the first moment she faltered. Her eyes softened, her guard lowered. Her voice, when it finally emerged, was barely above a whisper. "You want me to join?" Warren nodded once, firmly. Zara didn't answer, but the flicker in her expression said enough. For the first time all day, she looked uncertain, not from fear, but from possibility, from a door she thought had closed forever, suddenly opening again. But the moment was shattered instantly. Carter lunged forward, voice trembling with rage. "This isn't over. You think you can just replace me and praise her? She's the reason everything's falling apart." Security stepped closer as Carter's panic escalated, surging into one final reckless attempt to save himself. He wasn't done fighting, and the last card he was about to throw would drag the room into one more burst of chaos before he was taken away. The hallway outside Principal Dawson's office had filled with students, some pretending to head to class, others blatantly standing around just to witness the fallout. When the door opened and the security officers stepped inside, the murmurs swelled like a rising tide. Carter Hayes didn't go quietly. The officers gripped his arms firmly, guiding him toward the exit. His face was flushed red from rage and humiliation, his hair disheveled, his breathing uneven. The once untouchable king of Crestwell High now looked like a dethroned tyrant, dragged past his former subjects. But even as the officers urged him forward, Carter twisted violently in place, desperate to steal one last moment of power. His eyes found Zara, red, bloodshot, seething with hatred. "Don't think this is over," he snarled, voice trembling with fury. "You think one fight changes anything? I'll come back. And when I do—" He never finished the sentence. One of the guards jerked him forward sharply. "That's enough," the man warned. But Carter didn't need to finish. His eyes delivered the message for him, feral, vindictive, promising that he wouldn't forget, wouldn't forgive, wouldn't let the humiliation settle without retaliation. Gasps echoed through the hallway. A few students stumbled back. Others raised their phones higher, but Zara didn't flinch. She stepped forward. Not aggressively, not with bravado, but with the grounded confidence of someone who no longer lived in fear of this boy or anyone like him. Her voice was calm, steady, ice-cold but controlled. "Next time," she said, "I will still defend myself." She paused, letting the words sink in. "And it might end a lot worse for you." A stunned silence washed over the hall. Then, "Oh!" The hallway erupted with the kind of reaction reserved for finishing moves in movies. Students slapped lockers, covered their mouths, clutched their friends' arms. Some whispered, "No way," while others simply stared at Zara with newfound awe. Carter's face contorted, humiliation twisting into something desperate and ugly. "You!" he hissed, but the guard yanked him hard this time. "That's it. Move." As Carter disappeared around the corner, fighting uselessly against the guards, the atmosphere shifted like a great exhale. The threat was gone, for now, but the consequences of what had just happened rippled outward. Behind Carter, Dean, Milo, and Travis exchanged a single horrified glance, one that said everything they didn't have the courage to voice. The Empire was collapsing. Their protector was gone. Their power was gone. Without a word, the three scrambled away down the hallway, literally running from the school. Bags abandoned, dignity forgotten, they vanished into the nearest exit as if the building itself had turned hostile against them. The rest of the students watched in disbelief. The bully squad just ran? They dipped so fast. It's over for them. In the center of it all, Zara stood silently. Her breath eased, not in relief, but in readiness. The storm had broken, but another conversation, another weight, another truth waited for her. She turned back toward Principal Dawson's office. Her father was still inside. For the first time since everything began, Zara felt a tremor inside. Not fear, but something heavier, something intimate, something real. Because the next conversation wouldn't be about bullies or teachers or punishment. It would be about her, her past, her pain, and her father, who had just seen the battle she never wanted him to witness. She took a slow breath and stepped back into the office. One final reckoning awaited her. The chaos of the day felt far away as Zara and her father stepped onto the grassy field behind Crestwell High. The sun hung low, draping everything in the soft gold of late afternoon. A warm breeze rustled the trees, carrying the faint scent of cut grass and something like peace. It was the first quiet moment Zara had felt since the cafeteria exploded into violence. They sat on an old wooden bench near the edge of the field. The wood creaked beneath their weight. Zara lowered herself slowly, exhaling a long, shaky breath she'd been holding all day. Her shoulders slumped, not in defeat, but in release, as if the adrenaline that had carried her through each confrontation had finally drained away. Mr. Mitchell watched her for a moment before placing a steady hand on her shoulder. His touch was gentle, but his voice carried the weight of a father who had waited too long to say what needed to be said. "You've been carrying far too much," he murmured. "But today you didn't hide. You didn't run." Zara's lips trembled. "I didn't want to fight," she whispered. "I didn't want to be that girl again, but I couldn't just stand there while they humiliated me." Her father nodded, eyes softening. "Defending yourself isn't violence. It's strength." "And what you held back today," he let out a low hum. "That showed more control than most grown men could manage." Zara blinked hard, swallowing a knot in her throat. "But I hated how it felt," she admitted. "Not the fighting, but remembering what I used to be. What I lost." He said nothing, waiting for her to continue. Zara inhaled slowly. The confession she'd buried for 2 years rose, trembling, to the surface. "After the accident," she whispered, voice cracking, "I couldn't move the same. I couldn't breathe the same. I thought I'd never be good enough again. And every time I stepped onto a mat, I heard people whispering that I wasn't the champion anymore. I started to believe it. I started to believe I was broken." A tear slid down her cheek. She brushed it away quickly, embarrassed. Her father's expression tightened, not with anger, but with grief for the pain she had endured alone. "Zara," he said softly, "your worth was never tied to a medal or a title or a championship ring. You don't have to be stronger than before. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to keep moving forward." He tilted her chin gently so she met his eyes. "That's all healing ever is." For a long moment, Zara let the words settle inside her. They filled the cracks she'd been ignoring, the spaces where fear and doubt had lived for too long. The sunlight warmed her skin. The breeze cooled her tears. Finally she stood. Her father rose with her, but she took a step away. Not from him, but toward something else. toward the school building glowing orange under the sunset, toward a place that had tried to break her today, but had also witnessed her reclaim her voice. She stared at the tall windows, the brick walls, the campus she'd dreaded walking into every morning. "I think," she said slowly, "I'm ready to come back." A small, genuine smile curved across her lips, the first of the entire story, fragile but real. Her father smiled too, pride shining bright. And as the sun dipped behind Crestwell High, Zara Mitchell took her first step into a new chapter, one where she wasn't just surviving, she was rising. And just like that, the cafeteria's weak target became the storm no bully could outrun. Zara didn't just defend herself, she shattered an entire system built on fear, privilege, and silence. Her story isn't about violence. It's about a girl finally reclaiming the power they tried to crush. Now I want to hear from you. If you were in that cafeteria, whose side would you stand on? And why? If this story hit you as hard as it hit them, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.